Thank you very much for sharing these cases. My question, because I have limited experience with inverted flap, some of the failed, I noticed that the flap is returned back to the original position. So what are the characteristics that you can know from the first surgery if the flap, is there specific characteristic of the flap that you would know this is most likely it will return, or what's your idea in that?
I do not think you have special characteristics, but sometimes if you cover the macular hole with inverted flap during surgery, it stays stable in position. But sometimes during your next maneuvers, it floats away. You see it is unstable. In these cases, you can use probably some viscoelastic as a glue to secure the flap in position in front of macular hole.
So you put the viscoelastic above or between the
no,
retina?
Above. I put in some cases, if you are afraid, you can put ILM flap on the top of the retina and give some small amount of viscoelastic. Otherwise, I try to use fluid air exchange to secure the flap in the position. That means that I put my flute needle in front of optic nerve, which is nasal, and temporal flap. The flow of fluid moves temporal flap into its proper position.
Oh, thank you.
May I add something?
Yeah, but man from
May I add something to your question? Well, I'm not satisfied with the temporal flap. I usually do 360 degrees ILM flap, and then I put it over the macular area and do a fluid air exchange. And under air, if it becomes displaced, I reposition it under air, and I fill the eye completely with air, and I ask the patient to lie face down position for 48 hours, maximum 3 days. And really, I did not have a single case of the flap going to its original place. So you may try 360 ILM flap.
Yeah, but man from Cairo, Egypt. Jersey, I'd like to think about the inverted flap as it's a scaffold for healing. You know, if you agree with me, the inverted flap is a way of promoting the healing, being a scaffold to seal the macular hole. I have a question for you. In big macular holes, it was suggested yesterday that we can detach the macula in several quadrants so that we approximate the edges. Do you do that, or you see any difference in doing this? This is my first question. The second is, would the degree of ILM peeling in larger holes affect, in a way, the degree, the success of macular hole closure or not? Thank you.
I do not use such techniques as described yesterday. Actually, you see, my philosophy is to perform surgery as little traumatic as possible. And I think all these maneuvers, of course, may close the macular hole in some selected cases, but these are too traumatic for the very special tissue as retina. And actually, I am satisfied with inverted ILM flap in all cases, big holes, small holes, old and myopic, and I use this technique exclusively. I don't do anything strange and traumatic.
The extent affects the degree
I
of healing?
do not think that extent affects. Actually, my feeling is that flap must be bigger than the macular hole. If it is bigger than macular hole and covers macular hole completely, macular hole will be closed. If it does not cover completely, macular hole will stay open.
Ivan Tane from Sofia. I got one question to Master Navrocki. Do you have any experience with displace the flap after the 1 week after surgery, when you have half of the eye filled with mixture of air and gas, and the other is fluid?
Yes, it may be the cause of failures. We had about 4% of failures in overall group in last 11 years. So I think that this is the main cause of failures, but it is also another observation that if we have macula hole already closed, sometimes the flap moves away also and it floats somewhere around the macula hole, but this is no disturbance if macula hole is already closed.
So you consider that only the gesture of elevation and flapping is sufficient, not the position of the flap itself?
Position of the flap is very important initially to allow the retina to close itself.
So first several hours?
First several hours, of course. I ask patient strictly to stay in prone position for at least 12 hours after surgery, and then I advise patient to do it as much as they can for about 3 days.
But the findings on OCT follows several weeks after. There is so many changes. So do you consider that the act of surgery, flipping the ILM, that's induced something, the healing processes, etc., and doesn't matter after these 6 or 7 hours after surgery, the healing process? So
I think that if macula hole is already closed, it does not matter. But presence of ILM as a scaffold for retina tissue to proliferate or move towards the center of fovea gives you somehow long-term tamponade in these cases. And I think that is the biggest advantage of better result with this technique.
This is Manzar Said from UK. The question from Hassan Murtada on ILM peeling. I mean, there's growing body of evidence that ILM peeling can cause ganglion cell atrophy and loss of vision. While it is acceptable to do that in epiretinal membrane surgery, but the cases of vitreomacular traction where many patients do not have very poor vision and have intact ILM on OCT and clinically, is it really important to peel ILM in vitreomacular traction where seemingly there is no abnormality underlying?
Well, in these cases, you cannot say that there is no abnormality in the ILM. So if you are ready to reoperate on the patient to remove the ILM in another session, then go ahead and remove the vitreous, which is a source of apparent traction on the OCT, and leave the ILM. But if you want to conclude the surgery, and well, you have to remove the ILM in order to remove all the sources of traction, because removing the ILM, as I said, it eliminates the cells overlying the ILM, and also the vitreous fibrils penetrate the ILM into the inner retina, inside the retina. So there is still some traction on the surface of the retina, and this traction can only be eliminated by removing the ILM. You may remove the ILM not as extensive as shown in the video, but around the macular area, I think you have to remove the ILM.
Thank you.
Okay, I think we are over time, and thank you very much for coming here so early and for questions and for your attendance. Thank you very much.